Coles has responded to allegations by the ACCC that they engaged in misleading and deceptive conduct to force their suppliers onto an electronic ordering system and forcing them to pay rebates to Coles to be on it, effectively cutting their own margins. Well, I'm joined by Blair Speedy, who's the retail writer for The Australian. Now, first of all, what's the case that the ACCC has put forward against Coles here?
Well, they're alleging misleading and deceptive conduct, which is very difficult to prove. They're alleging that Coles made a number of representations to suppliers about the money they could save by using this new electronic ordering system. The ACCC is claiming that Coles had no basis for saying that suppliers could make these sort of savings, and also that Coles threatened suppliers with perhaps having their products dropped if they didn't toe the line and cough up this money.
Okay, so then what's Coles' response been to that?
Well, Coles is saying they spent a lot of money putting this ordering system in, and that and they looked very carefully at what suppliers could save. They went through their order records to work out exactly where the money could be saved. They also offered with suppliers there'd be some quid pro quo that they would order in what they're calling economic ordering quantities, whereby instead of ordering, say, half a pallet of something, they'd order a full pallet, which costs the same amount to ship as half a pallet, and so suppliers would save money there. Of course, Coles says that's a cost for them because they end up with more inventory, that's more cash tied up. So there was a little bit of give and take on both sides. They're saying. They're also saying that at no point was anybody threatened with having their supply relationships cut, and that of all the suppliers mentioned in the case, they all continued to trade with Coles.
But given the enormous power that Coles has in the market, I imagine if a buyer goes to a small business and says, sign up to this, in the eyes of that supplier, they are probably very worried about losing Coles as a customer. So wouldn't the ACCC say, well, these guys are effectively being coerced onto this platform that perhaps they've not been prepared for, or that they can't afford to give these rebates to get on it?
Well, that's certainly the case. Coles is saying that it worked very carefully with suppliers. The ACCC is saying that suppliers only had a few days to decide whether they'd accept the deal or not before things would be escalated to management or higher levels of management. Coles is saying that wasn't the case, that they spent months working with suppliers, and some said that they didn't want to go onto the system. They weren't forced to. Coles continued to trade with them. Others said they didn't want to go onto the system, and Coles would negotiate with them and work out a lower price. And there's several cases in the defence where they initially suppliers were saying they didn't want to use it. Then after a few months of perhaps trying it, would change their mind and actually come on board.
Now, part of this hinges on the idea of how much that supplier would save by going onto the system. One of those suppliers was Red Bull. Did the numbers add up for them?
Well, the ACCC is alleging that Coles was demanding $400,000 a year from Red Bull, and that Red Bull came back to them and said, we don't actually spend that much money servicing you, so we can't possibly save that much by using this system. That's where the ACCC case ends, however, in that supplier arrangement. But the Coles defence goes further and said that they continued to talk to Red Bull, and Red Bull told them that they actually spend $300,000 servicing Coles, and they're prepared to let them have half of it. So they actually reached an agreement where Red Bull would pay Coles $150,000 a year, and they started using the system. So
just break this down for me. So when Red Bull pays money to service Coles, that's not just to supply it with goods, that's to provide what kind of services?
Well, the service cost there, they're talking about their own cost of administering the Coles contract and the cost of shipping everything to them and that sort of thing. But in terms of the rebate, the $150,000, that's money that goes to Coles by way of lower costs, lower selling prices, in fact.
Right, okay. So there has been a lot of questions about the way that the big supermarkets have been dominant in terms of small suppliers. I know the Council of Small Business, for instance, has come out and said, this is another sign of how how much pressure was put on small businesses to deal with Coles. Isn't this really a sign that when the supermarkets shifted to a voluntary code of conduct for food and grocery supplies, that they were aware that there was a lot of concern in the market about how much power they had.
There has been a lot of concern about this for a number of years now. This ACCC case came after almost 2 years of investigation, and it all goes back really to the start of the price war between Coles and Woolworths, which has been running now for 3 or 4 years, with such items as dollar milk and dollar bread introduced by Coles. They were aware that the ACCC was looking into this, and as sort of a preemptive move, last year they signed the code of conduct with grocery suppliers. That was sort of to show that they're good guys and we're all in this together. Of course, it is only a voluntary code, but there are sanctions involved. It will be administered by the ACCC, so it's not just a worthless piece of paper.
So this has been a 2-year investigation. The case itself started on May the 25th. How much longer is there to go in this case at the moment?
This will probably take at least a year to 18 months. These cases never move very quickly. There will be a lot of evidence to be called. The statement of claim is around 60 pages, the defence is around 40. Each of them make mention to numerous other documents. We're going to be looking at filing cabinets worth of stuff being wheeled into court. It's going to take a long time. And
one of the people who's named in the case is the now CEO of Coles, John Durkin, who at the time was the head of merchandise, as in he was in charge of the rollout of this system. If Coles were to lose this case, or more evidence was to come out about the department he was running, would that look badly upon him as CEO?
He is named in the case as the head of merchandise, that things were passed up the chain to him and that it all took place with his approval. He's saying that or Coles is saying that only 3 cases, or as few as 3 cases, were escalated as far as his office, and that in each of those cases no agreement could be reached, but that they continued to trade with those suppliers. Durkin is known as a very tough negotiator. He's one of a group of UK retailers brought out by the outgoing Managing Director Ian McLeod. They all have reputations for not leaving anything on the table, so to speak. For shareholders, this will let people know that they've got an MD in there who is determined to cut costs, and that can only be good for them. Of course, the question is, what does it do for Coles' standing in the market and their reputation with shoppers? Well, the supermarkets are already a little bit on the nose with shoppers, but of course nobody's forcing them to buy dollar bread and dollar milk, and it's worthwhile remembering that as recently as 2007 we had an inquiry into why grocery prices were so high, and now of course people are asking why they're so low.
Of course, the thing is that these cases have been very hard to prove in the past for the ACCC, haven't they?
They have, and it's not really about the penalties in this case. Even if the ACCC does get up, the Coles amount that they were seeking from shareholders, alleged by the ACCC, was only $16 million. So even if they're forced to pay all of that back, it's not very much. But really, the real danger for Coles is if it affects how they can deal with suppliers in the future, and that leads to an increase in their costs, because these are very, very low margin businesses, and it's all about getting the volume and shaving a point of a cent here and there.
Bless Betty, thanks very much.
Thanks, Jackson.